On the night of February 1st, 1959, 9 experienced hikers were sleeping inside a tent on the side of a frozen mountain in the Soviet Union. Sometime after darkness fell, something happened. Something serious enough that they did not use the entrance. They cut their way through the tent from the inside, and then all 9 of them walked into the darkness. Some were barefoot, some were wearing only socks, most left their boots, coats, food, equipment, and their only real shelter behind. Outside, the temperature was far below freezing. A violent wind was crossing the mountain, and the nearest protection was more than a kilometer downhill. Weeks later, searchers found the tent. Then they found the footprints. Then, they began finding the bodies. But the farther investigators followed those footprints, the stranger the story became. Because some of the hikers appeared to have frozen to death, others suffered devastating internal injuries. Some were found wearing pieces of clothing that had belonged to their dead friends. And 4 bodies wouldn't be discovered until months later, buried deep beneath the snow. For more than 60 years, one question has refused to disappear. What made 9 experienced people abandon the one place that could keep them alive? This is the true story of Dyatlov Pass. In January 1959, a group of young Soviet hikers prepared for an expedition into the northern Ural Mountains. Their leader was 23-year-old engineering student Igor Dyatlov. He wasn't taking inexperienced tourists into the wilderness. These were trained hikers, people familiar with snow, cold, navigation, and the kind of decisions that can separate survival from disaster. The original group were 10 members. They traveled by train, bus, truck, and eventually skis, moving deeper into a landscape where settlements became smaller, and then disappeared completely. Their journals and photographs survived, and that is important, because unlike many mysteries, we can actually see these people before the tragedy. They weren't anonymous figures from an old police report. They photographed one another smiling, skiing, working, joking, living. And one of them would survive, but only because he left at an abandoned logging settlement known as Second Northern. Yuri's health problems became too severe to continue. On January 28th, he turned back, and the remaining 9 continued toward the mountains. Yudin would never see his friends alive again. They were expected to complete their journey around February 12th and send a telegram confirming their arrival. The telegram never came. At first, this wasn't considered an emergency. Expeditions could be delayed. Weather could change. Routes could take longer than expected. But as the days passed, families became increasingly worried. Eventually, on February 20th, a search began, and 6 days later, searchers found the tent. It was sitting above the tree line on the slope of Kolet, a mountain whose name is commonly translated as Dead Mountain. The tent was partly collapsed and covered with snow, but what searchers found inside made little sense. Boots were still there, clothing was still there, food remained inside, axes, cameras, journals, equipment, things nobody planning to enter a deadly winter night would willingly leave behind. And then investigators noticed something even more disturbing. The fabric had been cut, not from outside, from inside the tent. Whatever happened, the hikers apparently believed cutting through the wall was faster than leaving normally. And outside the tent, searchers discovered another clue. Footprints, several sets, moving downhill, toward the forest. Some appeared to have been made by people wearing socks. Others had almost nothing protecting their feet. But there was something unexpected about those tracks. They did not appear to show 9 people sprinting wildly in every direction. The group appeared to have moved downhill together. That matters, because it suggests this might not have been blind panic. Whatever frightened them away from the tent, they may still have been thinking, still making decisions, still trying to survive. And those decisions led them toward a cedar tree at the edge of the forest, where searchers made the first terrible discovery. 2 bodies. Yuri Doroshenko, and Georgy Krivonichenko. They were found near the remains of a small fire. Both were badly underdressed for the conditions. Branches high in the cedar tree had been broken. Evidence suggested someone had climbed it, perhaps to collect wood, perhaps to see the tent through the darkness. We cannot know. But we do know they had tried to make fire. They had reached the trees. They had attempted survival, and it wasn't enough. Farther up the slope, searchers found Igor Dyatlov, then Zenaida Kolmogorova. Later, Rustam Slobodin. Their positions were between the cedar and the abandoned tent, which raised a haunting possibility. They may have been trying to go back toward their clothing, back toward their equipment, back toward shelter. But none of them reached it. And this is where the Dyatlov Pass story stops being simply a case of people freezing in the wilderness, because 4 hikers were still missing. If you like investigations where we separate the evidence from the legend, subscribe to Nightfall Chronicles, because the strangest part of this case is still ahead. Winter passed, the snow began to melt, and in May, more than 3 months after the expedition disappeared, searchers finally found the remaining 4. They were buried beneath deep snow in a ravine near a stream, and their injuries transformed the case. Lyudmila Dubinina and Semyon Zolotaryov had suffered devastating chest trauma. Nikolai Thibault Brignoles had suffered severe damage to his skull. The injuries were powerful, but there were no obvious signs of a conventional fight that could neatly explain the scene. And the condition of the bodies created details that would later fuel decades of horror stories. Some soft tissue was missing. Dubinina's tongue was absent. Eyes were missing from some of the remains. Those details sound terrifying, but this is where a responsible investigation has to separate what is disturbing from what actually proves something. Bodies exposed for months beneath snow, inside or near running water, can undergo decomposition and animal scavenging. The missing tissue alone does not prove torture. It does not prove murder, and it does not prove anything supernatural. But at the time, investigators still had a problem. Something had forced 9 experienced hikers out of their shelter. Some had died from exposure. Others had suffered catastrophic trauma, and no single explanation seemed to account for everything. Then there was the radiation. Tests reportedly found elevated radioactivity on pieces of clothing associated with some members of the group. That detail would become fuel for another generation of theories. Secret weapons, military experiments, nuclear testing, espionage, strange lights over the mountains, and eventually, UFOs. Even a Yeti would become part of the mythology. Every unusual detail became evidence for someone's theory. The strange injuries, the damaged tent, the missing tissue, the radiation, reports of lights in the sky, the Soviet government's secrecy, the remote location, the fact that experienced hikers had apparently made an impossible decision. The original Soviet investigation eventually concluded that the group had died because of an overwhelming natural force. But that phrase explained almost nothing. And when an official explanation leaves a vacuum, something else usually fills it. A story. For decades, Dyatlov Pass became one of the world's most famous mysteries. And the most obvious explanation, an avalanche, had a serious problem. Searchers did not find the kind of massive avalanche debris many people expected. The slope was also believed to be too shallow. And if an avalanche had struck immediately, why had there apparently been a delay between setting up the tent and disaster? Why were footprints still visible? Why weren't all 9 bodies buried near the tent? Why did some hikers suffer such serious injuries, while others apparently did not? For years, those questions helped keep the mystery alive. Then, more than 6 decades later, scientists returned to the avalanche theory. And this time, they didn't imagine a giant wall of snow. They modeled something smaller, something more subtle, something that could have been much harder for searchers to recognize weeks afterward: a slab avalanche. In 2021, researchers Johan Gaum and Alexander Puzrin published a scientific model examining the conditions on the mountain. Their proposal began with something the hikers themselves had done. To create a flat surface for the tent, the group cut into the snow-covered slope. That cut could have weakened the lower support of a slab of compacted snow above them. But the snow did not necessarily have to move immediately. Wind continued transporting and depositing snow higher on the slope. Hour after hour, the load could increase, until eventually, the weakened layer failed. Imagine lying in a dark tent, the wind screaming outside. Then suddenly, a heavy mass of hardened snow strikes your shelter. People are injured. The tent is partially buried or compressed, and you don't know whether the next movement will bring the entire slope down on you. Your normal exit may be blocked, so you cut through the fabric. You get everyone out, and you move downhill, toward the forest, away from the avalanche zone. Suddenly, one of the strangest decisions in the entire case begins to look different. Leaving the tent may not have been irrational. It may have been the survival decision they were trained to make. The forest offered trees, firewood, protection from wind, possibly the ability to construct a snow shelter. So the group descended. They made a fire. At some point, some of them obtained additional clothing from those who had died. 3 apparently attempted to return toward the tent. Others seemed to have sought better shelter near the ravine. And then everything began working against them. Darkness, extreme cold, wind, injury, distance, exhaustion, and snow. One modern reconstruction proposes that the hikers in the ravine may have suffered their major injuries when snow collapsed above the stream bed or from forces associated with the snow itself. The 2021 scientific study demonstrated that a relatively small slab could generate forces capable of producing serious injuries under certain conditions. Then came another important piece of evidence. Researchers returned to Dyatlov Pass more than once, and subsequent field expeditions documented that avalanches are not some impossible phenomenon in that area. They occur. Does that solve every detail? No. And that distinction matters. The scientific model does not give us a camera inside the tent. It cannot tell us exactly who woke first, who cut the fabric, who was injured at which moment, who decided to descend, or precisely what happened between the cedar tree, the slope, and the ravine. Those final hours remain partly reconstructed from physical evidence. But perhaps that is what makes Dyatlov Pass more frightening, not less. Because if the natural explanation is close to the truth, then the hikers didn't need to encounter a monster. They didn't need to discover a secret military experiment. They didn't need to see something supernatural waiting outside their tent. They only needed a chain of ordinary things to happen in exactly the wrong order. A campsite cut into a slope, wind moving snow, a delayed failure, darkness, cold, injury, one emergency decision, followed by another, until 9 experienced people were trapped in a situation where every reasonable choice became worse than the one before it. There is a photograph from the expedition that matters more to me than any conspiracy theory. Not a mysterious light, not a blurred figure, just the group. Together. Before they knew what was coming, they had cameras, journals, plans for returning home. There was supposed to be a telegram. There were supposed to be stories about the expedition. Instead, Yuri Yudin, the man forced to turn back because of his health, became the only member of the original group who returned alive. Not because he made a brilliant survival decision, not because he saw danger before everyone else, but because days earlier, he couldn't continue. Sometimes survival isn't the result of knowing more. Sometimes, it is simply the path you happen not to take. More than 60 years later, scientists may have given us the strongest natural explanation yet for what happened on Dead Mountain. But one question remains. If you had been inside that tent, heard something strike the snow above you, and believed another avalanche could be seconds away, would you have stayed, or would you have cut your way out and followed the others into the dark? Tell me what you think happened at Dyatlov Pass. Natural disaster, human error, or is there still a piece of this story that hasn't been explained? And next, we travel to California. 5 men disappear after a basketball game. Their car is found abandoned on a mountain road. Months later, searchers discover evidence that makes their final decisions almost impossible to understand. The case is known as the Yuba County 5, and in some ways, it's even stranger than Dyatlov Pass. This is Nightfall Chronicles. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next investigation.